Not every conversation needs to be loud. Not every disagreement needs to become hostile. And not every man is interested in spectacle. The society of ordinary gentlemen exists for those who believe that courtesy still matters, that restraint is a strength, and that how one conducts himself, especially when it is inconvenient, is a measure of character. This is not a platform for self-promotion. It is a place for thoughtful discussion, mutual respect, and personal accountability. The Society of Ordinary Gentlemen is an online community with the mission of cultivating modern gentlemen by teaching skills, habits, and mindsets that elevate personal style, communication, health, and lifestyle through community, courses, and mentorship. Membership is open to adults willing to uphold these standards.
Welcome to another episode of the Gentleman's Forum. I am your host, Anthony Bunton, and today we are going to have a special edition on the Gentleman's Forum. Today I want to talk to you about, do you know your kids? This is a special edition because I feel that this is something that needs to be addressed. Lately in the news, we've been seeing these headlines concerning kids. One, Anthony Carmela. We know he's a young man that killed another student at a track meet. Now we have this Nolan Wells who was at a party on a boat and they went to an island or something. And anyway, he came up missing and they found him on the 4th of July. They ended up finding him. He had passed away. Now there's this whole big investigation as to the cause of death and what happened and everything. So I want to talk to you today as men, as gentlemen. Do you know your kids? And the reason why I say that, because there are different, I guess you want to say generations, the Gen Zs and the baby boomers and all that are on and listening to this podcast. We all were raised up, different cultures, different nationalities, different heritage, different parts of the world. But one thing that we should all have in common is raising our kids to be the best version of themselves, to be young ladies, to be young men that we can. And part of doing this is knowing your kids. I had talked about this before. I understand that there are some single mothers out there that are raising young men. And yes, they cannot teach a young man how to be a young man. They can come close, they can give him some pointers, but it takes a man to teach another young man how to be a man. The same way it takes a lady to teach a young lady how to be a lady. And I get it. There are men that are divorced, men that are separated, but you still have that responsibility as a father, as a parent, to know your kids. And what I mean by that, I'm not just talking about knowing their name and knowing what grade they're in, knowing their date of birth. I'm talking about knowing your kids, knowing where they're hanging out at, who they're hanging out with, what are they doing on the internet. That's the biggest thing, is what they're doing on social media. Too many parents are giving our kids too much freedom. Because of this, how can you give a kid this freedom? They don't even know what they're doing. They don't even know, they don't even understand. When I was growing up, my parents, they were strict on us, and I never understood why. I always felt that my parents were too strict. But now that I got older and I look back on how we were raised, I am so thankful that my parents were as strict as they were on us. Because I look at other guys that I went to school with, who parents let them stay out as late as they want, do whatever they want. Some of them are dead, some are in prison. But, my parents were strict on us. And because of that, it kept us out of harm's way. And it also kept us from making mistakes later on in life. Not saying we didn't make any mistakes at all, but it kept us from making some lifelong consequential mistakes. And so, especially as a man, gentlemen, you are responsible for your children. You are the head of the household. You need to know what your kids are doing, what they're into. My dad, he was in the military. He was an officer in the Air Force, and he was a minister. He pastored several churches throughout his military career as well. But I can honestly say my dad knew exactly where we were and what we were doing. My dad would even get involved in the sports that I was involved in. When I played Little League football, he coached. When I got into martial arts, he took the martial arts with me. When I was in Cub Scouts, he was very active in Cub Scouts. And this was a man that was an officer in the military, pastor in the church, had a family, but he still made sure that all of his children were accounted for and knew what they were doing. I mean, to the point where we used to laugh all the time because my dad was so in tune with us. I never forget, I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And my dad, he had this habit on Sundays. At that time, he's a Baptist preacher. So we had morning service, then we had evening service. And so in between services, my dad used to sit in the living room and watch football for a little bit. And then prior to that, he'd go work on his sermon. But that was like his daily routine on Sundays. I never forget one time he was sitting there, he's watching TV. We were living in North Dakota at Minot Air Force Base. He was sitting there watching TV, and I was walking behind him, and I was tiptoeing behind him. And my dad never turned his head. He was looking dead at the TV, and he said, son, you can think about it, but don't do it. And I froze, and then I started laughing. I was like, what? He goes, so let me tell you something. Anything that you're doing or you're thinking about doing, I've already done and got caught doing it. He said, so just don't do it. He said, you can think about it, but just don't do it. And that had always stuck with us. We used to laugh about it all the time. But that's how in tune my parents were, especially my dad as being head of the household when it came to his children. He knew exactly where we were and what we were doing. My mom was the same way. But the reason why I'm speaking about my dad, because number one, this is a gentleman forum, but also because he was the head of the household. It was his ultimate responsibility to be accountable for his children. And in the military, and I know some of y'all don't know this and you might not understand this, but in the military, you are responsible for your dependents. And so what that means is that if your kids get in trouble on base, your dad has to answer to his boss, his company commander, his battalion commander, the base commander, whoever. He has to answer to them for your actions. And so having said that, my dad made sure, especially being an officer, which means that he had subordinates up under him. He was chief of social actions, and then he was a wing commander. So my dad had a lot of people up under him. So everything we did was a reflection on him. So which is why me and my siblings, we never drank. We never tried drugs. We never did any of that stuff, because if we got caught doing that, my dad, who was an officer, his boss would have been the base commander. And so he would have to answer to these things. So what I'm telling you is that as men, we are responsible for our kids. We have to know where our kids are. And so I'm looking at, the headlines about Anthony Carmela and this Nolan Wells. One of them killed another young man. The other one ended up missing. And I'm not faulting these parents. What I'm saying is that you need to know who your kids are and what they're doing. You need to understand where they're at all the time. Now, granted, I remember growing up, and a lot of you guys that are on here and that are in my age or older, we used to go outside and play from early morning all day long. And the only time you came in to eat lunch, and you came in to go to the bathroom. But if you were a boy, and let's be real, if you were a boy and you had to take a pee, we would go behind a building, go behind a bush or something. But the fact of the matter is, we spent all day long outside. Most of the time, we used to go on adventures. We used to go hiking through the woods. We used to go 2 or 3 streets over. And me being a military brat and growing up a military installation, it was nothing for us to go way on the other side of the base. Now, if we went past the street, yes, we had to let our mom know that where we were going and stuff, and she would tell us what time to be back. And you better be back at that time. But I mean, if we were on the street, we might be 2 or 3 houses down. We might be in the backyard. We might be hanging out, going exploring in the woods and stuff. But then we didn't have the issues that they have now. So I get it. I mean, because like I said, we were gone all day long. You came in for lunch, you ate lunch, you went back out. You came in for dinner, you ate dinner. A lot of times our parents would let us go back outside and play until we all know that the classic sign when a street light came on. When a street light came on, you better be coming through that door. But our parents, and it's funny because our parents didn't worry about us to the point where they used to have commercials to remind our parents that they had kids. Do you know where your children are? Now, times have changed. Well, you can't do that nowadays. You can't let your kid go wandering off, even down the street, because there are predators out there that will snatch your kid up. There are sex offenders out there. There are people that will rob kids. You can't do that like our parents did that nowadays. And so it is imperative for you to know where your kids are and what your kids are doing, and teach them about responsibility. Now, I'm going to share this with you. This happened to me. I think I was about 13 or 14 years old. We were living in Misawa Air Base in Japan. And at that time, there was a lot of thefts going on at the PX, which is the post exchange, which is kind of like, I guess you would call it like a Walmart for military installation. I mean, they didn't have the food and stuff, but it was where you went to get clothing and things like that. It was a basic exchange. But at that time, kids were getting in trouble and they were going in there, they were shoplifting and stuff. And apparently it was bad enough that my dad being an officer on base, apparently there's a memos put out, all the supervisors and stuff. So my dad told me and my siblings that you do not go to the PX, to the post exchange, unless you have money. And he's like, do not go over there and hang out. Do not go there. He said, because kids are shoplifting, getting in trouble. And he warned us about this. Now, me, I'm being the knucklehead that I was at the time. I heard that they had got new shipment of clothes because at that time, being overseas, shipments of new stuff didn't come in like every day, weekly. They didn't have FedEx and all that stuff back then. So everything that we got overseas was like 6 months behind. So when new things came, music, clothing and stuff, it was like a big thing at that time. So I heard that they got a new shipment of clothes and music and stuff. I wanted to go check it out. So I decided to go to the post exchange and look around. So I go in, I walk in, I see some friends from school. We stop, we talk. I say, hey, how's it going, everything. Then I knew enough not to hang out with them because I wasn't supposed to be there. So I spoke and then I went on about my way. Didn't think anything of it. Went, looked around, went home. No big deal. Then later on that evening, my dad came home from work and we were eating dinner. And my dad got a call from the military police. The gist of it was that the undercover officer in the post exchange had caught a couple boys shoplifting. They denied that they were doing it. They put my name in saying that I was there and that I could vouch for them, that they weren't shoplifting, whatever. So they called my dad to get permission to question me. And so my dad, naturally, he gave them permission. Now, I got in trouble. I mean, I got my behind tore up and I got put on restriction. Not because I stole anything, because the military police made it known that I was not a suspect in this. They just wanted to talk to me to see if I saw anything. But I got in trouble because I was somewhere that I was told not to be. And so I got in trouble for that because I was disobedient to my dad. He was looking out for us by telling us not to go there so we wouldn't get involved and get accused of stuff that we didn't do, which is exactly what happened. No, I didn't get accused of shoplifting, but I was brought into the involvement of something because I was there. And if I had listened to my dad, I wouldn't have been there. I never would have got caught up in the middle of this. So my point is, as parents, we need to know what our kids are doing. I never forget my daughter, she was about 14 years old. This is back when MySpace was big. Everybody had MySpace accounts. My daughter wanted a MySpace account. And I told her, no, you're not getting MySpace. And she was like, all the other kids have. Well, I didn't name you all the other kids. You're not getting a MySpace account. Well, she decided that she was going to do it on her own. Her and her friend made up this MySpace account. That same friend of hers, they had a falling out. And so her friend got on her MySpace account and made these posts about that she was pregnant. I knew nothing about this. I was at work at the time, and at that time I worked a lot with the youth in the city, so a lot of the kids knew me and stuff. So one of the kids came and approached me and told me about this. I was flabbergasted. I was like, what are you talking about? So the kid brought up his MySpace and showed it to me. I go home and I questioned my daughter, and she tried to deny it, that she didn't have one, until I showed her the MySpace post. Then she told me that she didn't post that. I was like, well, who could have posted this? And I said, who had access to your account? And then she told me it was. I take my daughter, we go to this man's house, and I explained to him the situation, and I told him, I said, I need to talk to your daughter. My daughter had nothing to do with it. I said, yeah, your daughter did, and we need to get to the bottom of this because this post is on there. It needs to be taken off now. And so he wanted to try to get an attitude to defend it. And I was like, look here, man. I am not playing. You either get your daughter and open this up and delete this, or I promise you, not only is she going to go to jail, I said, but I am going to act like AT&T and reach out and touch you. And I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. I said, this is my daughter's life. This is my daughter's future. You're going to get this done. So he called his daughter out, and she denied it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call the police, and I'm going to have them investigate it. And because I knew a lot of people in the police department. And I said, hey, I'm going to press charges. Her dad finally made her confess, and she admitted that she did it. She was like, well, I don't know the password. I'm like, you better come up with the password. I said, because I promise you, you're going to go to jail. Miraculously, she remembered the password, and it got taken off. Now, my daughter got in trouble for being disobedient. And I explained to her, this is why I did not want you to have a MySpace page. So you're in trouble. You're on restriction for the whole summer because you went against what you were told to do and you violated my trust. So it is important for us as men to know who our children are and what they're doing. My sister, she cracks me up because she's so funny. My niece, her daughter, got to the point where she got the attitude and stuff. And so one day I was calling my sister, asked her something. I ended up FaceTiming her. When I FaceTime her, I'm looking at my sister. In the corner of the living room was my niece, and she's in the corner of the living room, and I can hear her crying, and I can see her doing this. I'm like, Angela, what happened? I said, why is Casey crying? And my sister said, I'm so sick of these government agencies and police and stuff telling us how to raise our kids. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so my sister, she said, Casey came home from school and I told her she needed to go clean up her room. And she gonna tell me that at school that day, the police came to their school and gave them a lecture and told them they have rights and that if they feel that their parents are not treating them right, they have rights and that they can report them. I said, so what happened? She said, I told Casey to go clean the room and she's gonna tell me she didn't have to. She has rights. And so my sister said, so look, she said, look at her right now. She has a right hand over her right eye. She has rights. Now, yeah, it's funny. But the reality is, gentlemen, it is not the police responsibility to raise your kids. It is not the government's responsibility to raise your kids because they don't know your kids. And let's be real, they don't care about your kids unless they become a victim or a suspect. It is up to you to know your kids. You need to know where they're at. You need to know what they're doing. My daughter, I knew her password. I'd go in there. You can say I was trolling her or whatever. I knew who she was talking to. I knew her text messages. And people like, shouldn't invade your kids' space. Invade? When I was growing up, we had rights as kids too. We had the right to remain silent when our parents told us to hush. That was the only right we had. And we gave up that right. We paid the consequence. But it's because of the discipline that our parents gave us during that time period. This is why we have the morals and the standards that we have now. And so same morals and standards that you need to make sure that your kids have. So we don't have Anthony Carmela. We don't have a Nolan Wells situation where a young man lost his life. And let me tell you something about that whole case with Nolan Wells. He was out there with a bunch of kids. There's so many controversies. They said he got off the boat or stayed with this girl. The girl said he didn't do it. There's a lot going on. But the reality is, those parents of those kids that were at that party, they needed to be making their kids tell the truth. A young man lost his life. And these parents are responsible for making sure that justice is served, making sure that those kids are telling the police the truth. I don't care what it is. I don't care if they were guilty. Let me tell you something. I love my children to death. But you know what? If my daughter did something wrong or my son did something wrong, you know what? They will go to jail. And I will personally take them to jail. They're going to answer for what they did. And if they know something, they better tell the truth. But we are giving our children too much right. They're children. You are responsible for your children. You are responsible for knowing what your kids are doing, where they're at, what they're watching on social media. That's a problem nowadays because if these parents were taking more responsibility for their kids instead of waiting until something happened and go, I don't know what happened to Junebug. I don't know how he did. Chuck was never like that. I had no idea he had a gun. I had no idea he was seeing that girl. You need to know, as a father, if you have a daughter, you need to know who her boyfriend is. Even if you have a son, you need to know what type of girl he's dating. If she does not line up to the moral and standards that you set for your children, you need to let them know. They need to find somebody else. I'm just going to keep it real. I told my daughter when she was growing up, if some boy says, comes up to you talking about he's a breast and thigh man, send him to KFC. You ain't got nothing for him. Now, you might think that's funny, but my point is, I'll let her know. No, he needs to respect you, and you need to respect yourself. We are not teaching our children to have respect for themselves. We're not teaching our children to have respect for those in authority, and it needs to stop. We need to take back the privilege and the honor that we were given to have and to raise children. This whole thing that's going on, and we're seeing it more and more in the news of young kids that are committing crime or becoming victim of crimes, and these parents have no clue of what their kids are doing, and it has to stop. If you don't know how to raise a child, and you don't know, maybe you grew up without a father, hey, I get that. There's nothing wrong with that, but there are places that you can go to help you on this journey, and one of these places is the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. And I talk about this on every podcast because I feel it's important. Society of Ordinary Gentlemen is a worldwide network of men that live as gentlemen. They have standards. They have a code of conduct. They have a constitution that all members of this society have to uphold. They live like gentlemen 7 days a week, 24-hour days, 365 days a year. They have a standard. They have a code of conduct that they live by. And gentlemen, this is what we should be teaching our young men. This is what our young men need. And listen, it is so imperative and it's so important that I'm the managing director for Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. But I am also getting ready to be the CEO of the Junior Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. We are going to create a society for young men ages 14 to 18 so we can help groom young men into becoming gentlemen. And it starts right here. But if you're a man, and look, there is no shame in saying that I wasn't raised like that. I didn't have a father in my life. My dad didn't raise me like that. No shame in that. Okay. But there is something you can do about it now. Become a member of Society of Ordinary Gentlemen and get involved, learn from these gentlemen. I mean, these gentlemen, they have a wealth of knowledge. They can tell you everything about fashion. They can tell you about style. So you can help your young man dress like a young man instead of walking around with his pants sagging and wearing Crocs all the time. You can help him understand what a gentleman is. You can show him how to treat a lady like a lady. You can teach him how to apply for a job, how to do an interview, how to finance money. If you don't know these things yourself, this is where the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen comes in. And it's very easy to become a member. You go to www.beagentleman.org. It's on your screen right here. You can join for free. Right now, it doesn't cost anything. Right now, it's all free. Okay. Because we are trying to get men involved in the society so we can help make a difference. We can stop this unnecessary victimization and unnecessary crime that our young men are creating. Okay. So you go there at the top, it'll say join. You click on that. It's going to take you to another site. It's called School. SKOOL. That right there, when you get in there, it's going to take you to Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. It's going to ask you about 4 or 5 questions. And those questions are designed for one particular reason. It's not there to police. The society is not a cult. It's not a radical group. It's just a group of gentlemen, but it's designed to weed out those that are not serious about living as gentlemen. It is designed to keep out the computer bots. It's designed to keep out those that just want to get in there so they can sell their personal business. It's designed to keep those out that think that this is like a Facebook page or a fan page or somewhere they can just hang out and just chill. This is designed to identify real men that want to live like real gentlemen. So once you answer those basic questions, then it'll give you access into the society. And when you get in there, I promise you, you're going to be so thrilled about it. They have some great discussions. On Sundays, they have a live lounge where you can get on there and you can talk to other gentlemen around the world. We have members in Australia, in Africa, in Egypt, in India. We have members from all over, and you can sit down and talk to these men. They have some great topics. We talk about everything. We talk about politic law. Now, we don't get into, who voted for who. No, we talk about the political aspects of laws and how it affects us. They talk about fashion. They talk about even fragrances. They talk about what's the best type of colognes, what's the latest, and is it good and is it bad. I'm telling you something. That's how I learned about Carolina Best. Carolina Best is one of our sponsors, and they're out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina area. They are designer wholesale fragrance. And you look right here, www.carolinabest.com. If you go in there, they have over 400 fragrances for lady and men. All the tops one, like one of my favorites is Creed Aventus and Creed Viking. I love those scents. I learned about them through the society. They were talking about it. I heard about it. I happened to be at the mall one day. I went over to Ulta Beauty. I smelled them. They were wonderful. And by looking at the prices, like $350 a bottle. And I was like, wow. But I remembered Carolina Best. So I went home, got on the website, looked it up, Creed Aventus and Creed Viking, 8 milliliter bottle, $10. And I was like, okay, it must be Eau de Toilette or cologne where it's mostly alcohol. I was like, but it's worth it. It's a shot. It's a start. I ordered it. Let me tell you something, gentlemen. It is like Eau de Parfum. It is mostly oil, and it lasts all day long. You put it on in the morning. In the evening time, when you get home, it is still on you. My wife loves it because she jokes all the time. When I go out of town, she'll grab my pillow or something because it'll have my cologne on there. My wife said, even my dogs, they'll find something that I've touched or something. because it has my scent on it. So that's how good it is. So that's how I learned about fragrances through the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen and through Carolina Best. And I'm telling you something, this is a great aspect. If you care about your children, you want to be a better husband, a better father, a better head of your household, the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen is the best place to go where you can learn how to do this. When you get in there, they have classrooms. And I mean, hey, gentlemen, they even have a gentleman's marketplace on there where you can go in there. I got this lapel pin right here in the gentleman marketplace. It's the logo of the society. My signet ring is the logo of the society. I got cufflinks from the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. They have ties. They have the emblem and the logo of the society on the ties. Gentlemen, there are so many different items that you can get at the gentleman's market. The best part about all that is that when you buy from the gentleman's market, all the proceeds go right back into the society. The society is free. It runs off of donations by the members. But guess what, gentlemen? Nobody in Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, no board member, nobody gets paid. All the money that goes into the society is there to help the society grow, to help with training material. It helps with setting up local meetings, regional meetings, state meetings, national meetings, and even our international members. That's what all the funding goes to. And you know what? I'm telling you something else that's best about the society. They are a nonprofit organization, which means that they also, in a time of crisis and emergency, they will take funding to help those that are in need. That's why giving to the society is important. It's not about somebody making money and living the high life off of your money. No, nobody gets paid. All the income that comes to society remains in the society to grow and to help others in need. And that's what I love about the society. And I encourage you. And you know what? Hey, you can go to the www.beagentleman.org. You can go to school, SKOOL.com, and go to search, type in the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, and you can join. Listen to these podcasts. We're on 10 major social media platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music. You can watch the video on YouTube. We're on Deezer. You can go to the website, www.beagentleman.org, and you can listen to them there. Or you can go to my personal website for the site is www.gentlemanoffaith/riverside.com, and they're all listed there too. You can go to YouTube, go to Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, and they're on there. Or you can go to my personal channel, which is The Modern Gentleman, and you can watch these videos. You can get audio, get a video, whatever it takes, gentlemen. Be active, get involved. I'm telling you something, gentlemen, this is the time that you need to get to know your children. If you don't know them, spend time with them. Hey, I know, we all have our hobbies. Some of us like to play video games. Some of us like to golf. Some of us like to go hang out with our buddies. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's more important right now is knowing your children, knowing where they're at, what they're doing, and what they're involved in. If you're not sure, you have some doubts, you need some experience, you have some questions, go to the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. Become a member. There are some gentlemen out there that'll be more than happy to mentor you and to help you be the best version of yourself that you can be. Gentlemen, thank you so much today for being on the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen's Forum. The Gentlemen's Forum podcast is for you, and I thank you for being here. I thank you for watching. I thank you for listening, and I challenge you to be the best version of a gentleman that you can be. And we'll see you next time on the Gentlemen's Forum. Have a great day.